yes, knock off Alex Jones here. This is Matt Walsh. And I wanted to do this on Wednesday when we had the Tuckered Out people on here. But the thing that I want to play about this clip. So this is a weird clip. Matt Walsh here is going to talk about romantic identity. So, I mean, he'll sort of vaguely describe it. But the reason why I want to play this is because the title of this video is "Why Does the Left Keep Making Up New Identity Labels?" So he's going to go through a spiel. He's going to go through some things, and we'll like break it apart. But there's also just something to be say about the overall conclusion of this video and how kind of weird it is and what it actually means. So one of the things that I keep talking about with conservatives that is very frustrating is they sort of never get to a conclusion that makes a lot of sense. So they talk about these identity issues, and all these identity stuff is apparently going to lead to societal collapse. And they don't quite explain it. So there is going to be a position here that he's advocating for, which is that the identity stuff is going to lead to societal collapse. And while we're watching, let's feel if we're reaching the same community like end as him, or if it's complete fucking nonsense. I would love a conservative at one point in their life to explain this identity thing happens, and this is how we get to societal collapse. Instead, all we ever get is identity thing, society collapse, and no relationship. So here we go, Matt Walsh. And remember, this is on the Daily Wire, which is Ben Shapiro's network as well.
I'd like to start today with a video not unlike so many others that we've played on this show. You know generally what to expect at this point. A person of unclear sex rambling incoherently and parading out a whole encyclopedia of new gender and sexuality labels that all seem to mean the same thing and nothing at the same time. And if that's what you're expecting, well, you're exactly right. This is the kind of thing I would normally say for the end of the show, but there is a larger point to be made here, I think. So first, I must subject you to the video, and here it is.
I want to note before we watch this video, so I mean, he's already said a lot of where he's going, which is somehow we're being subjected to all these identity labels and whatnot, right? But he's also just going to play a random, I think it's TikTok, a just random TikTok video.
Oh.
And there's a part of me that's just like, yes, because there's random people on TikTok who want to present their opinions. And why are you upset about that? First, I just want to say, why are you upset about that? I mean, it would be one thing if the opinion was stated was like racist or something like this, which is where like I would respond to it because like you're being a bigot. I'm going to point that out. But let's watch the TikTok. I mean, it's going to play on his video, and let's just see like how we feel about it, or should we be upset about it?
Non-asexual aromantic and allosexual aromantic are not always interchangeable. Non-asexual aromantic includes identities such as my own. I'm not asexual, but I'm not allosexual either. My experiences are going to be very different from an allosexual aromantic person's. I think it's just important if you're an ally who's talking about aromantic issues, if you're talking about allosexual aromantic issues, make sure to say allosexual aromantic. There's nothing wrong with that term. Just saying non-asexual aromantic also includes other aromantic people who might not experience sexual attraction but still don't identify as asexual. Just something to keep in mind.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how offended are you guys? How morally outraged are you? 10 being the most morally outraged, and 1 being not at all morally outraged.
My only comment really is like, oh wow, TikTok really is the new Tumblr, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, not offensive, lol. Yeah, I mean, part of it is like, there might be aspects where I'm just like, it's a little, there's a cringy aspect, but only I think from a part of me being like, I'm clearly not involved in those kind of communities, and I don't understand that, like, I haven't been put in a place where these distinctions matter all that much, but maybe they matter to them, and that's good for them, right? Like, at the end of the day, doesn't really matter. Let this person try to make contours and distinguishing all they want to. Like, what, to me, what would be bad at the end of that? You know what I mean? Like if I come up with a new identity where I'm like whatever, asexual, aromantic, and allosexual, aromantic, and these things are somehow different. Does that cool? Let it be known. New identities. I don't know why that's an issue. Now, like they could be wrong,
It's
and maybe
just
you could do like a science and try to like figure it out or something. But like, who cares? Sorry, Vienna.
yeah. No, it's literally just like who cares? Like, sure, do your thing. Like,
Yeah.
have fun. Please don't go crazy discoursing about it. I remember, the mid 2010s on Tumblr. I was there. We did that. But
But I want
yeah,
to.
just like do whatever. It's good.
I do want to add to that though, which is like part of me. It's like that person looked super young too, and like let them. I mean, like that's the perfect time to be figuring out identities and doing this stuff. Like I was doing that before we had an internet, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
no,
this is just what teenagers or young adults do. Let them do it.
yeah. But also, like, and this is a side note that's more related to TikTok generally, is like, I fucking hate that people are putting their actual faces and sometimes their actual, like, names to this shit. Like, I don't really care, like, what it is that you're talking about. It's just kind of like the idea that you are putting your face permanently to anything as a teenager is just
Yeah.
so bad. It's just so
Yeah, I mean, like,
bad.
yeah, and especially because I don't feel like as a society we worked out how to deal with that appropriately. Uh,
Yeah, no, like it hasn't been. And like as like deep fakes and shit like that get worse and like as like things kind of just continue to resurface, it's just like like we've seen tweets, Tumblr posts, Facebook posts, whatever like resurface, people just like saying something that, and again, this is mostly separate from like this actual video, but it's
right,
just
because this
like,
one was way more benign.
you know, yeah, like
Yeah.
this one's just kind of like, okay, yeah, you're just talking about whatever. But like just like that people are putting their faces on fucking anything. I hate it. I hate it so much. It makes me so uncomfortable. And it's just gonna be like it's gonna be a nightmare in like 5 years.
I mean, it's already kind of an. I mean, but yeah, I mean, like we're seeing it all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like we haven't fully like seen the
No,
effects
I
of
mean
it yet.
TikTok is exacerbating
Like,
because I think it was more like YouTube, but like I think there's way more people making TikToks than there were people making YouTube.
yeah.
Indeed. Indeed, I will keep that in mind. And thank you for that reminder. I'd actually been thinking about these very issues
Perfect.
recently.
Thank
In
you.
fact, I was
There we
sitting
go.
around.
Yeah, I mean, if we ended it there, perfect response. But we know that
Yeah, no, can we end
okay,
it?
yeah.
Can we end it?
No, we're gonna.
We're done. We got it. Good one. Nice to see you, Matt. We're on to the next video.
This is the last video, so we gotta carry it out.
We can find something else, please.
No, it's gonna get
Anything else.
there are some good moments in this. I think one's coming up really shortly. His vitriol is unwarranted and it's amazing. It's Jody. Jody is on cam right now. In case we're wanting faces, I put my face on things. Here I am.
Around with some guys drinking beer and debating the finer distinctions between allosexual, aromantic, asexual, and non-asexual, aromantic. We had to actually draw a four-ringed Venn diagram just to keep it straight. But now we know, and that is very good. So thank you for that. Now, for anyone confused, allosexual may sound like the name of a dinosaur from the late Jurassic period, but it's not. You're thinking of Allosaurus. An allosexual person is not an extinct reptile, nor is he necessarily attracted to them, though he could be. No,
I do have to say, I wish now I want there to be dinosexuals or something.
They're called furry. Well, they're called, I guess, scalies, furries. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on like the individual dinosaur and how that stuff works. But like,
Yeah. No, that.
yeah, I just come on. We had him being supportive there. We could have left there. Come on. We could have like asked.
We knew he
We
wasn't.
could ask the audience for
supportive,
video
though.
suggestions. Like,
That
we knew
joke.
he wasn't. Well, of course we know.
That joke.
We always
did
know.
suck, but the implications of the joke were funny. The joke itself is not funny. What you could draw from the joke is pretty funny. Rex appeal.
See, we can read some Guardian articles.
Yeah.
We can do anything other than watch
We gotta watch
boring Alex
Oh my
Jones.
god! Look at these images. Pterodactyl turned me. Taken by the T-Rex.
Wait, are these? Does it have the author there? Are these that one erotica writer? He did it. There was one erotica writer that like he just like does like absolute batshit things and just like sometimes based on real world events. So he made a whole erotica novel about the Suez Canal like blockage.
Amazing. Amazing.
I love that dude so much.
Yeah, I see an L. James, but I can't tell if they're the person that wrote it or not. I did like, there is, for those who want to know, there is a Republican as well who was outed for writing a Bigfoot erotica. And there is a naughty image of a Bigfoot that exists somewhere online.
Allosexual, according to WebMD, means anyone who experiences sexual attraction. Yes, any sort of attraction at all makes you an allosexual. So even if you didn't want to be an allosexual, it didn't feel the need for an additional label to add onto your sexual orientation, you have it anyway. There it is. Just take it and be grateful, you brat.
This is where I'm like, when it first hit me and I was like, what? Take it and accept it, you brat, because I came up with a new word that like properly demarcates certain things or newly demarcates things. Like imagine having like you could pose the question, do we need to make further demarcations of our sexual drive or our romantic orientation? Do we need to carve those up and break them down into particular categories? And you might have an argument to say it's not necessary. But here's the thing is, science is a really interesting thing. And maybe sociologically speaking, we might want to be interested, or psychologically speaking, in people's different orientations. Isn't it interesting to note why, like, some people are more sexually active than others and have more of an interest in it than others, and other people are more connected to people in this way than that way? Like, isn't this an interesting question? And yet he's mad at the sheer fact that some people out there who do this work came up with a new label to distinguish just normal sexual attraction versus other kinds of sexual attraction. And he's like, now you're forcing us to take this label? No, because how often are you going to use allosexual in a conversation other than the one that we're having right now? I also don't use more distinct carvings of nature in other like conversations either. Like I have no clue why he's so offended about the use of a new word. We have all the words already to describe God's earth. No more words or phrases. We did it. We reached the end. Well, language is given to us by the universe and doesn't evolve, obviously. Yeah, exactly. God forbid we discover new things or make new categories. How dare we?
As for the other labels just listed, an asexual person is somebody who allegedly experiences no attraction to anyone. However, an aromantic person is someone, again, I'm using WebMD here, a site that sometimes makes me think I'm dying, and at other times, like now, makes me wish I was. An aromantic...
I'm just going to leave that one hanging in the air.
Romantic person is someone who experiences no romantic attraction to others but may still be sexually attracted. So someone who isn't very romantic but is still sexual may be considered aromantic. Every woman listening right now is thinking, oh, you mean like literally all men?
Like, notice there's nothing in those phrases that want to overgeneralize these things. Yet he's living in a world where it's like he's already gained the biases of what he thinks men and women are and what their sexual behavior and their romantic drives are. And he has those biases stuck into his brain that he applies to all situations, such that he's knowing that his audience is going to riff on these sexist, ancient jokes that he has stored in his brain. Yet scientists have come around being like, hey, guess what? There are variations here. We have new differences. There's degrees here. And they apply to any and all sexes and people who are non-binary. So, like, cool, we're learning things about humanity. And then he's like,
It's
sexist joke, though.
it's also just like, damn, I feel bad for his wife.
Yeah.
Like, good God.
Yeah, Dan, his joke delivery is off-putting because the punchline relies on you being a bigot. And since we're not bigots, or at least moderately less bigoted than he is, we don't find the joke all that funny. We just are struck by the, like, holy shit, you're a bigot.
Yes, perhaps. But we should note that aromantic people can not only still be sexually attracted, but also can experience, quote, intense loving feelings. So a sexual person who experiences intense loving feelings towards another person, isn't that the same thing as being romantic? Perhaps again, but who cares? We're on a roll here. Let's keep going. And please do not confuse
I want to pause there, just like he doesn't have much to say about that one, fine. But there's a sense in which he understands what he's talking about. Like, he read the things, he's making these distinctions, and he's talking about it. So it's like, clearly these things can be communicated to others. It's not that complicated. You know? It's not that complicated.
romantic people with demi-romantic people. Those are those who have romantic attraction only after forming an emotional bond with another person. And every man listening is now thinking, oh, you mean like literally all women?
See, again, it's all the, like, stereotypes that he has built up in his brain. Like, I don't know. I know many men who would probably self-identify as being demisexual. It's not just a trait of women. And there's probably many women out there who are not demisexual. And they're perfectly fine human beings. Gender humor is so lame and boring. I know, right? But the humor part is not why we're listening. It's just not what his intent with the jokes are not funny. But we can still make fun of it.
There's also lithe romantic or okoiro romantic. These are people who experience romantic attraction but don't want it to be returned. So they want to be romantically attracted to you, but they don't want you to feel anything to them. Otherwise known as creepers.
How is that?
Like
creepy?
from Minecraft?
Yeah.
See, that's a joke.
You nailed it. You landed that one. I mean, I am personally not chiromantic or whatever they said, but I guess it's like, I don't know. So you want to be romantic, but you don't want to have the romanticism returned. Like, what's wrong with that? Like, why does that automatically make you creepy? I can't relate to it, but, like, cool.
And don't forget gray romantics. Those are people who experience romantic attraction sometimes, but not other times. Otherwise known as everyone. And then there are quiro romantic people who can't tell the difference between romantic and platonic attraction. Once again, that simply describes every male member of the human species.
Okay. How much longer that just him naming off.
No, it'll go
I
somewhere.
can't do this for 5 more
But
minutes. I can't do this for 5 more minutes.
Look at what he just said, though. He just said that men can't have platonic friends, is what he just said here. Like he is like just fully invested and sucked into this Christian worldview. Like what? I wonder, does he have any? He must not have any women staff. No women around him whatsoever. Because if he even tries to be around them, he's clearly going to have romantic feelings towards them. And how would his wife feel about that? Like it's just so fucking toxic. And the fact that, like, he's platform broadcasted, gets to appear to all these conferences, goes on Tucker Carlson's show. Like, this guy has a huge fucking reach for saying super Christian, far right shit.
Now, I know what you're thinking. What about pan-romantics? Well, you were either thinking that or something more along the lines of, please stop talking about this. Assuming it was the former.
Yeah, that one.
He feels you, but
I can tell you that Healthline just published an article about pan-romanticism, which says, quote, pan-romantic and asexual are not synonymous. They're two different identifiers with two different definitions. Someone on the asexuality spectrum could use both identifiers in order to best name their lived experience with romantic, pan-romantic, and sexual, asexual attraction. But identifying as one doesn't imply identifying as the other. While your sexual orientation names who you want to have sex with, if anyone, your romantic...
I get this vibe too. Like, none of this really matters. But, like, there's a sense here in which it's like he's reading it as if he knows what it's saying. So, like, what I want to highlight here is, like, notice, like, they can, like, compartmentalize in their brain, like, their ability to read and digest this stuff, with them still, like, having this vague sense of, like, yeah, but it isn't, like, none of it matters. It's all meaningless. It's all mumbo jumbo. But it's clear there's some sort of understanding. It's just, like, based bigotry. Like, it's at the base of it, it's bigotry. He just is like, no, it's wrong. There's man and woman. And the only sex is missionary and through a sheet. Anything that varies from this is an abomination, and God does not like it. That's like, I mean, I wish he would have just said that right up front, and, like, you don't really need to have the rest of this video. But I guess part of his audience.
I wish he hadn't done the fucking research. I wish he hadn't read anything. I wish the only book he ever read was the Bible. Like.
Listen, but we're getting a great lesson on pan-romanticism. So.
No. I don't need it.
I would have to say this was This was much cringier than the TikTok person. I feel like I'm cringing you to death.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm pretty sure he's gonna turn away from just the identifiers in a second.
Romantic orientation names who you want to spend time with. Well, romantically, if anyone. Romantic orientation names who you feel a pull toward, who you desire to cuddle or make dinner with, and who you want to spend all your time with, explains gray sexual pan-romantic Elle Rose, founder of Asexuality Spectrum Resource Secret Lady Spider, and co-host of the Invisible Spectrum podcast. I don't even know what any of the words I'm using mean.
And yet you said them. I mean,
you defined all of them already.
I mean, that was the thing. The whole segment was it, like, defining these terms, and then he ends it by going, I don't know what they mean. You read the definitions. Oh, desire to cuddle. This man's whole dating bio for sure. I mean, he's just a nice guy.
Matt Walsh does not cuddle.
Yeah.
We've already established that he feels no romance. He is not romantic.
No,
he accepts no physical touch.
He rubs his beard against his wife like sandpaper in order to establish dominance and create distancing.
Yeah, they have sad missionary sex through a sheet, and he rolls off, and then he doesn't say anything to her, and that's it. And she's expected to get pregnant, and there we go.
But sex commences only after a primitive mating ritual where they he exposes his talons and perches on the rear end of the bed. You never know. Maybe he's an undercover freak. Hopefully, one would hope, but I'm pretty sure it's vanilla all the way down.
No, I hope it's vanilla. I hope it is. Because otherwise it's gonna be fucked up misogynistic shit.
Yeah,
Like that's
true.
the only other option.
Yeah.
Panromantic, I feel like I'm having a stroke as I read this. Panromantic is one of the many romantic orientations.
you would
Other
be.
romantic orientations include homoromantic, heteroromantic, and biromantic. Someone who's panromantic can experience romantic attraction to someone regardless of their gender, she explains. Okay. So that's the breaking news here. We've got sexual orientation, but also romantic orientation. That's the latest thing, hot off the presses. Okay, just dropped. Romantic orientation.
Pretty sure romantic orientation has been around for a while. I do not think that it just dropped.
Who the fuck introduced Matt Walsh to the split attraction model? Like, good God. This is legit like 2014, 15 Tumblr flashbacks. Like,
But my guess is this comes from
Oh my
research that is
God.
decades old. I do not think.
oh, I'm pretty sure it comes from like. Yeah, I don't even want to get into it. Like,
I feel like this is like dredging up like past experiences of you on Tumblr, but like I don't know, it's new to me. I was never a Tumblr character.
this shit sucks. I hate this.
You may notice that the explanations offered by these people always seem to do the opposite of what an explanation typically is meant to achieve. They explain things in order to make those things more confusing and obscure rather than less.
Like how this is the thing that I don't understand. Like he went through, you get all the definitions, you get all the clarifications, and yet he still wants to pretend like it was confusing and meaningless. When it's like, I don't know, when you explain it, it's pretty clear what these terms distinguish. Now, if you want to like criticize these and say these distinctions don't exist and maybe run an experiment, try to find some way to study it and see if they exist or they don't exist, then fine, have at it. Go figure it out. Or even if like I'm pretty content myself with just listening to people describing their experiences. I don't need to run a study necessarily to get that. But like if you require some sort of evidentiary basis, like go for it. Like but like what they're doing is like well, it's the same thing with critical race theory, which is like they're pointing to like a field, any field, anywhere, that's coming up with new distinctions and new categories and doing research on them. Because a lot of this stuff about aromantic
I mean,
comes
these.
from research.
No, most of these terms and stuff, like this comes from like, I don't know. Like a lot of it, I think, originated on Tumblr or like variations of community type forums. Like they aren't psychological terms for the most part, and the ones that are problematic at best.
No, so I just
Like-
I maybe like spoke a little too firmly there. What I mean was like you could study these things as distinctions or categories. They're susceptible to being researched or discovered in that sense. Is what I'm getting at.
I suppose.
Which is why it's like, but like, I mean, maybe like some of them are problematic, but like, why some of them aren't though? Like I don't know. If you want to say that some people are more or less romantically attracted to other people, or any of the other things that he pointed out here, I guess to me it's like, is the purpose that is going on here to confuse? Or is the purpose of people just coming up with categories to either find who they are and like go on some sort of self-identity exploration and discover things about themselves, or to I don't know, distinguish themselves from others? Like he has it in his mind that the goal is confusion, and what I'm trying to say here is that that's not the goal. It's usually coming from the fact that teenagers are the people who are looking for their identity. That is probably where this is coming from, and it's not because they're searching to confuse.
Yeah.
That's nothing new. We know that there are dozens and dozens of sexual orientations, which combine with dozens and dozens of genders to create thousands of different variations, though the variations seem to be incredibly redundant, describing the same basic thing in different ways, with differences that are more meaningless than subtle.
But what if they do have meaning for other people, though? Like, maybe some of the things that you were saying just a couple minutes ago is true as well, Vienna, in that some of these are either useless or even bad, and therefore, like, yeah, maybe we don't need them. But, like, some of them might be useful for some people. So, like, why do they try to police that? I don't know.
We've talked many times about where this proliferation of identity labels comes from and why so many people become so obsessed with endlessly labeling themselves. But now I'd like to travel deeper. I don't know if I'd want to travel deeper, but I'm going to. Into the mindset of these people. All the way into the dark, cavernous maze of their convoluted egos. And see if we can't come up with a more complete answer.
Okay, here we go.
What really is going on here? Because it is something significant and consequential. Why are so many people, especially young people, and not a small number of them, wasting their lives by trying to categorize themselves? I thought I was boring because I'll sit around on a Saturday organizing my fishing tackle. That's a fun Saturday to me.
You are boring.
I have a question for you, Vienna. Why might teenagers be trying to categorize themselves or coming up with identity labels?
Something, alienation, capitalism, etc. Having nothing to identify with or care about because everything has been taken and monetized. I wonder.
I wouldn't even go to that extent. Like, to me, it's like, this is something that teenagers tend to do. Like, most teenagers are adrift in trying things out and figuring out who they are. Like, there's a reason why there's these, like, tropes of, like, goth and jock and punk and all these, like, the preps and, like, all these ways that, like, people sort of, like, distinguish themselves in high school or early college years. And part of that comes from the fact that people are trying to find friend groups they belong in and pick up certain traits and identities and, like, adhere to them. Like, that's what teenagers do. That doesn't mean that there is, like, there is something essential out there that is natural, that is called the goth identity. But people are trying to discover where they belong. They're teenagers. I don't know. Why is this so complicated?
Yeah, like back in the old day, you'd just start a new Christian sect, but,
Yeah.
No, now things are different.
No, but, like, I think that there might be something to that. Trying to find, like, a new angle on
Yeah,
that.
no, like it's...
Yeah. I mean, like,
I wasn't entirely joking.
Yeah. So, but he is going to try to come up with some sort of, like, why it's a problem now. Because, like, his argument has to be it's a problem now. That all these things that we just discussed can't be it. It has to be something that's happening.
But these people, or even my sock drawer, as much of a stereotype as that is, I will do that.
You're bored.
And I kind of enjoy it. But these people spend hours every day sifting through their own psyches and dividing themselves into smaller parts and putting each part into its own drawer with its own label. What kind of a bizarre hobby is this? And again, why?
We'll get into why in a second, but, like, I also want to note, like, he's kind of criticizing self-reflection here, isn't he? It's like, how dare you self-analyze yourself and try to figure out who you are and sift through your psyche? How dare you do that? You should just ignorantly live your life in complete ignorance and sort your sock drawer and your tackle box. It reminds me of the King of the Hill thing, where it's like, why would anyone do drugs when they can just mow a lawn? That's what it reminds. You're Hank Hill. You are Hank Hill.
Well, I think a few factors are converging to create this perfect storm of total nonsense. Many people today, of all ages, but especially those who grew up in the internet era, have spent their entire lives, including all of their formative years, staring blankly into screens. Now, this not only exposes them to all of these new contrived identities, but more importantly, often prevents them from developing any functional skills or hobbies outside of cyberspace.
Cyberspace.
Like, I hate this. This is old man, like, this is Socrates being like, those young people and their book reading, ruining everything. They should go back to the oral lesson, because if you use books, you're going to lose your ability to remember the oral lessons we taught you. Your brain is going to shrivel up and decay, and we're all going to be like empty vessels. So therefore, we must burn books and get rid of books and go back to just listening to each other. Like, we've had old fuddy-duddies like this throughout all of history. First it was the TV, then it was the radio, then it was like, now we got like smartphones and the video games, like all the new tech that like kids get into. It's like, listen, there might be
damn newspapers.
Yeah, there might be some issues with screen time. There might be, and we can get into them. But the issue isn't that they're just going through. I mean, the other part of what he's saying here is that like these people are using their smartphones and they're learning things, as if like learning new things on your device is a problem. Discovering things is a problem. And like, I also don't like, kids have hobbies nowadays. They just don't think sorting socks or cleaning your tackle box is a ton of fun. I'm sorry, they're not in the 1950s anymore, Matt. You gotta let it go. You gotta let it go, bud.
Listen, and they'll probably find those things fun in like 20, 30 years. Like,
fair.
I bet Matt Walsh didn't find them fun however long ago.
No, he's always been a boring fucking old man, even when he was 10. Guaranteed. He's one of them.
But he was busy like carving out Christ on the cross or something, like,
or whittling.
He had other hobbies when he was a kid. Exactly.
Feeling risky because he was using a Swiss Army knife without his mom's permission. At the Christian camp he was forced to go to because his parents didn't want to deal with it.
He asked to go to.
Asked to go to, yes.
Yeah, begged. Please send me to Christian camp, Mama. Mama, I need the love of Christ. His family's not even religious.
Oh my god. Oh, Jesus. Lord have mercy.
These are people who don't know how to do anything and don't desire to do anything unless it can be done by moving their thumbs across a screen or a video game controller.
As I say that on my YouTube channel that is being blasted into people's phones and the algorithms so that youth can see my shit. Like, why don't they just say, why are you watching my video right now when you could be playing with a stick in a local creek? Like,
God, I would love to be playing with a stick in a local fucking creek right now. Oh.
There are obviously exceptions to this general rule.
Pardon?
I would give anything.
Listen, we're like 2 minutes away, right?
But the fact is that teenagers today spend almost all of their leisure time on screens. And we all know that intellectually, but
oh, yes, we know.
I think we often don't sit and really reflect on the implications of it. A report from a couple of years ago said that the average teen is using a screen 7 hours a day, not including schoolwork. And I think that estimate is probably low. But assuming it's not, 7 hours and then schoolwork.
That seems way too high for me to be accurate. 7 hours a day?
Maybe it was from a study like during COVID times when they were all online. I don't know.
Yeah, that would make way more sense. But if you're talking about like kids who are actually sitting in a classroom all day, Well, do they go home and just non-stop use the thing till like 1 in the morning and then go like?
I mean, yeah, probably. I probably do. Like, yeah, no, like I spend too much time on my phone, and my sister also spends too much time on her phone.
Sure, there's some
I think
aspects
my
of it.
weekly report this week was like 56 hours on my phone. So,
Yeah, but there's differences too. I'm talking about kids here too. Like especially with my son, but my son's gonna be 6 soon. But like he'll play outside and he'll play with Lego and stuff like this. So I don't know. Depends, I
I
guess, on what
mean,
kid and at what time. Like he's not specifying anything
but
here.
I think, yeah, I think we're presuming teenagers. Like,
I mean, how else are they gonna learn about their identity if they're not reading blogs for 7 hours?
exactly. What am I supposed to do if I'm not refreshing Tumblr every like 30 seconds, hoping that anybody has posted something new?
Yeah.
That's just every hour of the day. That's the entire, there's no time for anything else. There's no time to do anything else or find any physical or creative outlets, which means there's also no time to develop anything like an authentic and unique personality. A person begins compulsively self-labeling, not in order to understand their own personality, but as a replacement for it. That's why the newer sexual categories all seem to be centered around androgyny.
Nothing that he read today had anything to do with androgyny. You know? Not a single thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like they're not. Again, teenagers throughout all of history were looking for self-identity. Jesus Christ. This is like, he is boomer, but not boomer. You know, he has the boomer energy. Like, just tell us that you're secretly 60 and all that hair is completely dyed, and I will fucking believe you. Kids and their phones.
They're not discovering their identity, but rejecting identity. It's an anti-identity.
By creating
Opting for
more
something
identity?
dull and indistinct, where they're all allegedly being their authentic selves, but end up looking exactly like one another.
How? So he's none of this makes any fucking sense. Dull and indistinct. Yet he went through a whole thing about how all these things are distinct. Like, it's like he thinks that they're dull because he's created a category, and that category is all these youth that create all these identity labels and are lumping them in one category and therefore thinks it's homogenous. Even though the people within that category that he's created have come up with a whole bunch of identity markers. Like, it's just fucking nonsense.
And together they look like nothing, a dreary blend of two sexes, where all that is beautiful about both has been lost and only the most superficial aspects remain. It's tempting to say that we're turning people into sexless robots.
Did you know that? We're turning into sexless robots. I didn't know.
Sure. Whatever, man.
I didn't, I had no clue. I didn't realize that we were there.
That's not quite the case. See, a robot has no sense of itself, no self-awareness. And that's the case everywhere but in, sci-fi. In reality, robot has no self-awareness. But the other hallmark of the modern Western person is that he is fanatically self-aware. He is consumed by his awareness of himself. He is aware of almost nothing but himself, in fact. He has the exact opposite problem of the robot. While the robot cannot think of itself, he can't think of anything else.
He's like almost doing like the sheeple or NPC sort of like meme here. He's like, there's the robots out there, but like the man, the essential man is self-aware and cannot help but be self-aware of himself. Some stupid thing.
He is obsessed with figuring out what he feels and how he feels about what he feels and how his feelings about what he feels make him feel, and on, an endless spiral, a black hole.
Oh, it's negative.
Now, skipping some steps here, admittedly. The internet, the lack of identity, the narcissism, the self-obsession, these only lay the groundwork.
There's been tons of studies released recently that actually show that narcissism is probably decreasing. Just to point it out there.
Sure.
So all these people who are like, oh, the youths nowadays with their me generation and their YouTubes and totally focused on themselves and like posting themselves, they're totally narcissistic and only care about themselves. There's no evidence that supports that. None whatsoever. Sorry.
We still need the cultural influences to come in and introduce these concepts, giving the empty people a framework that appeals to them in their emptiness. But they're only spreading fertilizer on ground that is somehow both sterile and yet fertile.
What?
God, I blew my headphones off my head. It's sterile, yet fertile. It doesn't make sense to you?
I hate this.
It's sterile yet fertile.
Just press play. Just press play.
So what happens in the end when a person
happens?
has no personality and yet can do nothing but stare back into the void of himself, trying to discover an authenticity that he's long since destroyed? Well, this is what happens. Modern culture is what happens.
Okay, you shitty
Gender theory
fucking
and pride
existentialist.
flags with 1,000 contrasting colors are what happens.
Like, what? Why is this again? I post this for every conservative argument that we hear. That why does this matter? And why is that bland? If anything, like, to be honest, the rainbow is way nicer than just the bland whiteness that you're describing here, bud.
A person with no life and who has had no experiences telling us to respect his lived experiences. That's what happens. Along with suicide and drug abuse and society beset by meaninglessness and despair. Ultimately, civilizational collapse is what happens. The good news
Cool,
is
dude.
that we get some
Whatever.
funny TikTok videos out of it. So, try to look on the bright side. Well, I hope you...
Sure. Yeah.
The
This
weird-
video made me a fucking, like, anti-civilization anarchist. Like,
I just love, like, his idea is somehow these identity markers create something bland and stale. But, like, what is he propose? Like, he's proposing that all these people that want to be different than how I want the world to be are, like, they're the boring ones. And true, I guess, creativity and self-expression is being a bland conservative that has a strict adherence to religious norms and is heteronormative and white.
conservative? Project?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Like, it's just so lame. But it's like, also, I just want to know. I want to know. How? Like, it feels like at the end there, a bunch of steps were missed, you know? It's like somehow one day you're on your phone, you're figuring out your identity, you're figuring out your identity, and then you're like, all right, I'm an aromantic, allosexual, goth. And the next minute, you're doing drugs, you're having sex out of wedlock, and you're committing crimes. And then in the next minute, all of society has been completely destroyed.
Yeah. You're describing me.
And then it's, you know what? It's like at the end of the movie, like the character like has like a flashback and is reflecting back on their lives. It's like, if only I did not read that Tumblr blog about allosexuals. Only then would have society had been better.
No, like, it's one of the end of life flashbacks after they, like, I don't know, blow something up. I can't think of something funny that they're blowing up, but they're blowing something up.
The nukes, all the nukes just randomly explode out of societal decay. While they're shot.
Yeah, after I suicide bomb a nuclear silo. My last thoughts will be, I should never have signed up for Tumblr.
Yeah. I spent too much screen time in my teenage years, and now I'm a suicide bomber. An allosexual suicide bomber. Oh my god. I mean, the irony there too is like society collapsing. Like, I find this funny in reflecting, because I had mentioned this on Wednesday too, which is that when people want to talk about society collapse, if you push them further enough, like especially the more white nationalist elements, they'll bring up either Rome or Weimar Republic and be like, when those societies got too decadent, that led to societal collapse. And then what they never really want to fill in the picture is that those came to societal collapses, sort of. I mean, it's obviously in the Roman one, I don't know too much information, but in Weimar Republic, it wasn't just that these people were decadent and all that fun stuff. They were just being like fucking normal. And then these reactionaries were being like, why are you being normal? You should be exactly like us, and we're going to kill you to create the nation that we think it should be. And then went in there and took over, and, you know, we have the Holocaust, right? So it's like when you say that, like, the evidence that decadence leads to society collapsing, it's not because the decadence is bad. It's because of you people, you reactionaries who want society collapse, because you would rather have society collapse than deal with the fact that people are fucking the way they want to fuck. That bugs you so much that you would murder millions of people. So you're the fucked up problem. It's not us with our identity issues, if you want to put it that way. It's you. You have problems.
Hello, my rebels. Hello, my rebels. I'm a good boy. I'm a weirdo.